Hi there. In this Microsoft Office Excel video, we'll take a look at pivot tables, how to add them and what they are and how to manipulate them. So I presently have an arrangement of data here. So I've got a company column here. The companies exist within a city. So I have a column for cities, and the cities exist in countries. So I have a column for countries. And I would pick these things up via a VLOOKUP, and these ones from a drop-down list. Now I also have a product which is within a category. So I have the product column as well as the category column, and then I have all of this stuff calculated in a column called sales. So I've entered all of the number of sales per company, which is in a country, which is in a city, which is in a country, as well as for the product, which is in a category. And then I have the total. So if you look at something like this, it's very hard to see how you would add up, for example, just one city's worth of data, right? You'd have to filter it and then add that up within a table. So you could only look at basically one city at a time, or one product at a time, or one category at a time. But a pivot table will allow you to look at all of that stuff at the same time. So it's kind of like adding a filter for everything. So first of all, to add your pivot table, you want to select your data. You can always select after, but I always find it to select best to select first. So I'm going to grab all of my data, including my column headings. That is the names I've given to my columns. So I've got all of that selected, my whole arrangement of data that I wish to study, and I'll just choose Insert, and then under Tables I'll choose Pivot Table. Since I've already selected my data, I don't have to select it afterwards, but you could just choose Insert and then select your data, whatever you like to do, but I always like to select first and then Insert. And I always add my pivot table to a new worksheet, or if you have a blank worksheet, but always into a blank new worksheet. Generally, I don't want it alongside my data. I want a whole table. These can be quite large. So I'll choose OK. And then I get my pivot table here, and I get a choice for all of my, basically my row and column labels. So we'll see what that means. So I'm going to have some rows that these can be either country, city, company, or I could have country, city, company in the columns, and then I could have category and product. And you always want to be from largest to smallest. So a country contains cities, which contains companies. So that's the arrangement you want. Or categories contain products. So basically you want container, container, all the way down to the individual items. Stacked that way. You will see what happens if they get out of order. It gets a little weird. So there's basically a right way to do this and a wrong way. So the right way is always largest to smallest. So I'm going to grab company, and I'll put that on my columns. And then I want city, and I'm going to put that in my columns right above company. So that's the stacking order you want. And then I want country, so I'll put that above city in columns. And those three things belong together, so you wouldn't want to have company in your rows and then country and city on your columns. That is if you want to see all of this stuff. There is a situation where you may want to see that. So I'll add category to the rows, and then I'll add product below the category. Now for the values, this is basically what all of this stuff will add up to. I want sales. As soon as I choose sales there, it pops sum of sales into my values. And it's actually adding my sales to all of the values in here, and then it's adding them all up over here. So if you take a look at what we have now, you see we have, this is called an outline. So we have a category which contains products. So if you want to collapse that category, you can just hit your minus sign. So I'm just going to collapse everything. You'll get a better idea of what's happening here. So right now I have a company, and then it's further categorized into a city and then into a company. So I could collapse that down to the country or to the city. We only have one city in Britain, so just collapse both companies into that city, or the one city into Britain. Germany has 2. And you'll see this a little better with the US, because the US has a number of companies. So again, you can collapse the cities and then the countries. So you see that the US has a number there, and each company is in a city. So I could collapse Bentonville, Detroit, Houston, Irving, and then have US total, or just collapse US altogether. So you see what we're left with is much like the very first spreadsheet that we looked at. We have column names across the columns and then the row names across the rows. Now, basically it allows you to expand or collapse any of these things. So right, if I want to look at all my computer sales, there they all are. And if I want to see computer sales by Britain, I can open that up. Now, the reason it's called a pivot table is we can twist this thing. So if we decide, oh, I don't like the products as row names, I want them across the top as column names, we can just move them around. So that's why it's called a pivot table. So I'm just going to move my category up into my columns, and I'll move my products underneath my category. Now it looks a little weird. I just got to finish up with this. So I got category product. I'll just move down. So I'll move country down to rows, city down underneath country, and company underneath city. So basically twisted it around. So now that we now have our categories and products across the top, and our countries, cities, and companies as the rows. And the more you work with this type of data, the more you'll kind of get an understanding of how a pivot table is useful. Generally, basically you can think of it as something that takes all of your ongoing records and then collapses them into kind of a final result. And again, the data layout is very particular. So we basically have field names across the top, and then all of the fields, the actual data for each of those field names down the bottom. We don't have we don't have the data for a particular record that's represented here. So that's basically pivot tables. Thanks so much for watching.